this computer. Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone to our special presentation tonight. This is our large group meeting for April, but we're planning to do something a little different tonight in that we're not going to have too much of our business meeting until the end, and instead we're going to do a presentation using a sim table, some technology that we are dabbling with and that we're hoping to use more of as the summer goes on, in both its physical form and also then in its virtual or electronic form, which you're going to actually see tonight. So this is the first time we've done this, and obviously it's the first time we've done it virtually. Island Park did a sim table presentation. Liz, what do you think? About 3 years ago, right? 4 years ago, 3 years ago? About that, right? Maybe 2018?
Something like that, yeah.
And so
we'll meet in person.
Right, back in the day. And so hopefully, though, we're going to be able to meet in person as we move forward into the summer. We have some things planned in Island Park Sustainable for our summer activities that will include also maybe some people gathering around an actual sim table. So let me share my screen. I'm just going to share my screen and navigate that way for now. Oh, let me pull some things down first. Oh, let me get rid of my email. Had all these windows up. Okay, so I'm going to really quickly share just a few minutes of this video. This is actually what a sand table looked like. So a sand table, what was used by firefighters to kind of go through scenarios, and it really involves obviously some sand and a table, but it also involved Legos and trees, and it was a very physical medium that people kind of push things around. And I'll let John or Liz maybe talk a little bit more about what that looks like. But let me run this video, just a couple minutes of this video.
So we're looking at ordering resources. Know what you're going to do with it before you order it. Getting after this and then holding the road. How do we evacuate all these people? These are called sand tables.
Once you go this route,
what we do is we set up the sand tables to represent the topography and the terrain in a particular area with the fuels, with the vegetation, and then basically put what would represent a wildfire in there, along with different structures.
say Steve did the triage, so he's labeled some of the houses already.
And a great opportunity for us to train on strategy and tactics in wildfire.
And I could also start breaking into divisions as soon as possible, go Alpha Zulu with it.
The advantage of doing something like this, it allows people to have an aerial view, so you can get 5 or 10 or even 15 people to look over the sand table and see particular vegetation in one area, structures in another area, a particular slope. We identify where the wind is coming from and what it's doing, kind of what the anticipated weather is going to do. And then they base their decisions on really the information that they would have on a real incident, as far as what they're going to do with the resources that they order, how they're going to deploy them, and their actual strategy and tactics on how to address that fire.
It's at least good to have them as your backup line of defense.
So this benefits the citizens of West Metro by giving their fire officers, their managers, real hands-on training, handling incidents in their district. The better they handle those incidents, the less impact it's going to be on those citizens, basically minimizing what could easily become a huge event and keeping it small.
So that is a sand table back in the day, and you can see it's made out of a lot of little pieces of twine and other kinds of trees and actual sand. So then the technology has evolved a little bit, and a fella named Stephen Guerin out of Santa Fe has actually taken this same concept on a sand table and overlaid an actual Google map onto a sand table to create more of this kind of a situation.
SimTable, your source for leading innovations in emergency management simulation. Combining existing GIS data with next-generation agent-based modeling and ambient computing provides a straightforward, easy-to-use approach. Customized models of your communities and populations provide a truly interactive experience in all hazard simulation. SimTable's simulation platforms enable professional first responders and citizens alike to easily operate and collaborate in the planning, training, and outreach needed to deliver effective emergency plans for their communities.
So I'm going to stop there for a second and point out that this table is still a sand table. We've just overlaid an electronic map onto the sand. So instead of having Legos and pom-poms and string to simulate the fire and the fire front, now it is electronic. Just play a couple more seconds of this.
The table provides simulations of hazards pertinent to your specific region, state, or county. Lessons learned simulations are dynamically created utilizing your existing data. Create your own scenario within the map of your choosing, utilizing customized agent-based models for airborne particulate, flood, evacuation, wildfire, storms, as well as biological and ecological behaviors, each based on your community's data and how it will affect the hazard or model.
So I'm going to stop there, and you can tell that with a sim table, they are able to show all different kinds of hazards. So a flood, hurricane, tornado, and then of course, in our case in Island Park, we would be using it to simulate a fire behavior in Island Park. And that's what we're going to do a little bit of tonight. But before I move on, is there anyone that has a question about the sand table or the sim table, or what you just saw in these little videos? Okay. Let's see. I'm going to stop.
Hey, Paul, this is John. I will add, and thanks for the videos. I will add that we firefighters up on the north end of the Caribou-Targhee up there in National Island Park, we do have a sand table ourselves, the old style sand table with the sand and the toys. Firefighters always love playing in the sandbox. So we literally have one, and we use that to help doing training. And I've done it with folks here on the Caribou-Targhee as well as previous employment. So it's a pretty commonly used tool, the old tool that we can just build ourselves with a bunch of 2x4s, some plywood, some sand, and some toys. So pretty easy to build, and can go a long way towards training firefighters in putting them in the hot seat, so to speak, making decisions quick on the fly. You can make it as realistic as possible, yet it's actually not realistic. There's actually not fire on the ground. So it's a great tool. We have been enjoying using it over the last many years.
Awesome. And then just to add on to that, we at Island Park Sustainable is partnering with the College of Eastern Idaho, or Eastern Idaho College of Eastern Idaho. They have a fire preparation program, and they wrote a FEMA grant, and they secured 3 of these actual sim tables. So not the sand table as John was talking about with the real stuff on it, but this is the simulation. So it's the computer overlaid onto the table. And so several of us in Island Park, and also in some other people that are working with us, we're going to train in early June on how to run the sim table. And then once we're trained on it, we are going to be able to borrow the table from the college and bring it up to Island Park and use it with our communities. So that's pretty exciting. And at the same time, we're working on being able to create videos like the ones we're going to show you tonight using a more of a computer desktop application. So we've been working with SimTable quite a bit to create these products and to have these discussions. Thanks, John. Any other questions or comments about the sim table or the sand table and kind of how it operates initially? Okay. So John, before I run the the actual first simulation, I'm going to bring up. So this is actually Fremont County GIS map. This shows Pinehaven, and I'm going to be able to kind of zoom out here a little bit. I'm going to do that as slowly as possible because I know it kind of goes slower on your end. And as I zoom out, you can kind of see this road right here where my little question mark is going. That is North Antelope Flat Spur. And to the west of it, you can see is Pinehaven. And actually up here at the top of the screen, oh, I'm still moving, let me slow it down. Right up here at the top of the screen, where you see my little cursor is moving, that is Harriman. Am I right, John Elliott? Mark Elliott?
That is Harriman.
That's Harriman. That's your footprint, and that's like going to be all your buildings. I'm going to zoom back in, and then John, do you have some idea of where the Lyle Springs on this map might have started? I am thinking it's like right about here.
If you're asking me, yeah, I think, is that cursor the question mark?
Yes.
Yeah, right about there in that area, yep.
And it's possible, this is a 2019 aerial. So it is possible that some of what you're seeing there in terms of, and it may be smaller for you than it is for me on my computer, but some of what I'm zooming in on might actually be the burn.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you can actually see the black marks through the trees there.
Yeah. So just give us a little bit of background while we look at this map and kind of understand how close this is to Pinehaven versus, and without getting into like what happened to fight the fire, tell us a little bit about some of the conditions for that day.
Well, so this was back on September 18th of 2018, September, I think it was 18th, 2018. It was fairly dry that time of year, and it normally is dry, obviously in the middle of September, but it was below average with our drought indices that we keep track of. It wasn't the driest on record, of course, but it was pretty dry. And so it was a day when we had a lot of our firefighters that normally are in the area, Island Park and Ashton. They were out fighting other fires. 2018 was a pretty busy year, a lot of fires going on, and actually a lot of fires going on to the east of us in Wyoming, on the other side of the border, where we had a bunch of large fires on the Bridger-Teton National Forest. If you guys remember, a lot of
Callie, can you feed Marble?
a lot of communication going on from Jackson, Wyoming, about large fires going over there. So when this fire started on that afternoon of the 18th, there were very few firefighters, Forest Service firefighters in the area. In fact, even pretty few interagency resources in the area, BLM included. We had one engine that was working in the area, and so that engine responded, and I responded, and we went from there. So I don't know how much more detail you want me to go into, but it was I think we got the call about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on the 18th. I think it was maybe a Wednesday or a Thursday afternoon, and then we started heading that way. And so that's kind of the startup to it. Paula, I don't know if you want me to go through the rest of it, or are you gonna want to do something different?
No, I'm gonna go ahead and launch. And I think I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna launch it through the actual YouTube video, John, because I can do some close-up on it and slow it down as well. So let me just get myself up, and I'm gonna share my screen. And okay, so here is, oh, it's already started. Look at it, just started right on up. So this right here is a, this is the sim table. This is a video. I'm gonna try not to make it too large for you, but not too crazy small. This is a video that sim table put together for us after we talked a little bit with their key engineer. You can kind of see where the kind of what we were looking at on that other map. This is the North Antelope Creek's, no, yes, that's North Antelope Creek spur. The fire probably started somewhere in around here, would you say, John?
Yeah, I think it's, I think I saw it just a second ago. It was underneath maybe the S and the Springs or something
Okay,
close
got
to
it.
there.
That title's gonna go away. So you can kind of, you can see on this screen that's paused, there are going to be some things coming in to fight the fire. But you can also see the conditions for that day. And John, these were the actual conditions for the day.
Yeah, pretty close to it. Yep.
Okay. You can see that the humidity is super low. Normal fuel load, if you know, whatever normal might be. But we did have some resources that are going to come into this fire, and I'm going to play it in a second. And you're going to see, I'm going to try and slow this down. The resources are actually going to come in. Oh, it's at 25, so it should burn pretty slow. So let me go ahead and start it. Now you can see this, the fire has started here, right above the S. This title will go away. I'm actually playing it a little slower than the sim table video actually plays. That's why I wanted to play it directly off of YouTube.
Paul, is there any way to make the screen bigger so we don't see all the extra stuff?
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you.
Is that better? How's that?
Better.
Better, okay. So again, you can kind of see where the fire started. And I slowed this down enough that you'll, in a moment, you're gonna see some of the, it's harder for me to kind of see where I'm actually gonna hit my play when it's blown up like this. You're gonna see where some of the support comes in to start fighting that fire. So take a look along the highway. Here comes fire engines, and they park where they park.
Yeah, so just for everyone's sake, just make sure you see the legend on the top right corner of the map there. It kind of shows you what resources will be eventually coming in. And so you can see those 4 different icons. You'll see them show up from time to time on the fire. And that's kind of a definition on the right.
Here comes the helicopter. And the helicopters, and then this is fairly slow. Helicopter would have, and then here comes a tanker. And you can see they've drawn a fire line there. Okay. So
And the cause of this fire was what?
It was a human-caused fire from a camper.
Thank you.
Yep.
so I'm going to stop it really quickly there. And I wanted to talk a little, maybe hear from John. So John Sullivan is here with us tonight. John was the ranger. John, what was your title over at, what's your title over at Harriman?
That was the big kahuna. That was the park manager.
Oh, big kahuna. Yes, so John Sullivan was the park manager. So John, what's, knowing that the fire is north, or that Harriman is north of this fire, not very far away, what kinds of things did you do in collaboration with the county and the Forest Service when this fire broke out?
Well, the good thing about it is I think we laid out a lot of things prior to this. The park has a great relationship with the Forest Service, and I like to think I had a pretty good relationship with Liz and John. So there was some preemptive work that actually went on before. John and his crews have done a lot of work along that Green Canyon Road. So that's a nice buffer for us. But when this thing starts, of course, like anything, you know, with Harriman being what it is and such a icon within the state park system, you know, any kind of fire is a big concern to us. So we fall back to the experts which is the Forest Service. And Liz and I and John talked about roles and responsibilities and the rest of that kind of stuff before this, these types of things even happen. My role basically is I fall back and I'm a resource to those guys. Our number one concern at the park is resource protection, whether that be natural resources or the historical resources within the park, the buildings, as well as public safety. At this time of year, we're still full. We still, during the week, we have full buildings occupancy within the park. So evacuation, we have one road in, one road out of our park, and the main road, Green Canyon Road, leads into it. So those are all issues for us that we need to address and coordinate with the Forest Service and John and Liz. And what was it? I think it was John McConnell. That was his first IC and training day. So John was new and working with John White on this. So like I said, our number one thing is public safety, evacuation if we need to, and protection of resources. So we'll coordinate with the Forest Service however we can in order to make that happen. So we did a number of things with them. So I get a hold of them. I get a hold of Incident Command. I get phone numbers. I give out my phone number. We were able to use the park as a staging area, and I don't know, John might, I don't know if we'd call it the Incident Command Post. We set up at the park shop area. We use the shop as a staging area, incident command for briefing and updates in the morning. We let the Forest Service give them access to our fire hydrants and any kind of water sources that we have. And we try to provide as much information as we can for access to the park, or if it came into the park, our trail systems and maps, so crews can get access to wherever they need to go. So we're a big kind of more informational thing for them. I can provide information on, say, critical areas or areas, that will say, maybe we'll just let that burn and we'll concentrate, our resources over here. And then things like, I think we were even dipping out of Silver Lake there. So authorization and permission to go into the park and get the helicopters to bucket water out of there. So I guess that's kind of it in a nutshell. What else are you looking for? What I can explain more if I didn't hit it all.
Where did we end up getting water from?
I know there's right out front of, they were using a fire hydrant right out in front of the park residences, which is right on the other side of Green Canyon Road there. We also have water that I think we were providing out of our shop area, as well as the office. There's another fire hydrant that's located right out of the office. John can probably tell you more than that, but for us, those are the big things that we fall back, take on an informational role. We don't have the expertise or the equipment to handle things like this. And we're just glad we got the Forest Service backing us up.
Yeah, so I'm gonna back up a little bit and kind of just go so fire trucks come in with, besides the, we had air support. So John, what air support did we have that day, and why did we have air support that day?
So we had, I believe it was 2 or maybe 3 helicopters, at least 2 helicopters that day before the end of the day. And we had at least 2 air tankers and maybe even 4. Can't remember exactly how many came and went. But we had quite a good air support show for us. And for those who aren't as familiar with aviation, like Liz, I think, showed in the chat box, the helicopters will have a bucket, a couple 100 gallons worth of water they can put in that bucket, and then they can drop that water wherever they get it from on the fire or near the fire to either slow it down or put it out. An air tanker And you've probably seen them on the news, those big airplanes that drop mostly retardant, the orange or pink colored chemical that comes out of an airplane that will also go down, and not necessarily right on top of the fire, it'll go ahead of the fire. So you can see that kind of that straight line on the right side of the fire that they initially put down, and that was in front of the fire, be ahead of the fire, if you will, to try to stop the spread or slow down the spread of the fire. And so we had, like I said, several of those air tankers. And actually what we had that day was at least 2 what we call scoopers. And they were air tankers that actually fill up out of a pond, or well, not a pond, but a lake, a large body of water. And I think it went up to the reservoir, I believe, is where it got its water, and filled up, several hundred gallons, if not a couple thousand. I'm not quite sure how much water they hold. And then they can, again, come in and with a single or 2, or maybe even 2 drops, they can put that water down on the ground. And then we may have had, I say more because we may have had some other smaller air tankers that came in and dropped retardant, but I can't remember. But the reason we had so many aircraft, or so much aircraft available that day, yep, and there's a picture of one of the scoopers right there dropping water.
So actually, John, let me pause you for a second. I do want to hear about how we also truck in the water, but we have a resident from Pinehaven with us here tonight. Our neighborhood ambassador is Tim Fuchs, and Tim actually took these pictures. So Tim, tell us a little bit about where this was and how you got these shots.
Well, I was just north of the Pinehaven subdivision on the east side of Highway 20, and sitting along the highway, we could just take pictures of the planes that were coming in and the helicopters that were working.
So here's one of those scoopers, right?
Yes.
John, you think they scooped out of I was about to say Castaic, because that's the lake they used to scoop out of where I used to live. They scooped out of Island Park Reservoir?
I'm guessing so. That's the largest body of water nearby. So I'm guessing that's where they went.
And
So
then,
this is Liz, and they did go out of the Island Park Reservoir, and they got permission to go out of Henry's Lake, but they were a little nervous about Henry's Lake because of how shallow it was.
this is a great shot. Hopefully you can kind of see, he's got them coming in one after the other. So this is Tim. Also, you took this picture from, where were you, Tim?
I was almost over towards the bridge, just across the highway from Harriman Parks Road.
And John, are you able to talk a little bit about this pattern of them following each other in terms of, what they're going, how they're going to suppress or create a fire line?
Typically air tankers, these smaller ones, and you probably laugh when I say small, because these don't put out as much as some of the larger aircraft, but these scoopers, and I think Liz put up a little message there, single engine air tankers, which are pretty much crop dusters. Those are all kind of our small aircraft, air tankers, and they typically go in 2, sometimes 4 aircraft at a time, because they are small enough that they don't drop as much water or retardant. Then they'll typically one go first, and then the other one kind of come in behind it, maybe go right to the side of it. It'll kind of depend on what the where they want to put the water or retardant. A comment was asked just now about air attack. So we do have what's called air attack, which is just a plane, doesn't drop any water, but it's just a plane that follows, or that goes in front of the air attack, the aircraft, and basically tells them where to go. So it'll do a bunch of laps up on top and talk to these air tankers and tell them where they should be dropping. And the air tankers are just concerned about, obviously dropping the water wherever they're told to drop it. So air attack is what they're called, and they're the ones that typically identify that. So I believe we did have an air attack that day.
And then Tim, tell us where, you're still in the same spot, I imagine, right?
Yeah, I am.
Great pictures. So this is one of those helicopters, John. I think this is a really good picture right there. Look at that. Good job. And
Yep, so that's one of our larger helicopters. They can drop several thousand gallons of water. And the nice thing about a helicopter is they can be pretty precise about where they drop their water. You can see it's directly, they can hover over a flame or whatever and drop it exactly where they want to put it. So they can't, it's difficult for them to put a lot of water out in a large area. It's more for pinpoint precision. So they do a really good job of that.
And then Tim, tell us a little bit about these next pictures.
So that was east of Pinehaven, looking across, just the smoke that was laying in towards late afternoon.
You just imagine, wow. And then I think that's probably.
They were dipping out of the river and then over, I believe, towards Harriman Lake also.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing these pictures. I think that's a really helpful visual for us as to what we were looking at in terms of the so John, tell us a little bit more also about like how water comes in with the trucks or how do we get water? So John Sullivan was telling us that we were using hydrants over at Harriman, but then that water has to somehow get to the fire. So how does that happen?
So we were working with the Island Park Fire Department quite a bit that day. They had quite a few engines that actually showed up before we even got there. And they were waiting for us to kind of give them direction on where to go. And their trucks, they've got a lot of large trucks, which are really nice to have. They carry a lot of water and they can travel on the pavement and in through the cities and towns. But it's difficult for them to get off the highway onto these smaller roads and certainly off those roads onto, into the woods. Forest Service has all of our engines are smaller engines. We don't carry as much water, but it's a little bit easier for us to drive around in the woods and then drop that water where we need to. So that's kind of what we were doing is we were doing a shuttle system. We were going up to the park and pulling water out of the hydrants from the park there. And then we would, when we needed more water, we'd go to the fire truck that was parked closer to us and fill from them. So it was a pretty nice mutual aid support system there.
Yeah, we were trying to get the Nathaniel to come in from the fire department this evening to give us a little bit more insight into the great work that they did for this on this fire. But ultimately, give us the stats on the final burn of the fire, John. No.
So 70 acres was the total acreage on the fire.
And the helicopter, the air support, the helicopters, all of that support, was that a usual thing that we then have access to in Island Park all summer long, or what's the circumstance where those are concerned?
No, so on the forest, we have 3 helicopters. One of them is stationed at Swan Valley, and the other 2 are stationed down in Pocatello. And it's very common for us to only have one of those on the forest throughout the summer because the other 2 are out fighting fire somewhere else. So we may only have one helicopter on the forest available to us if that helicopter is available to us that we might be able to use. But it's used across the entire forest. In the BLM, it's an interagency helicopter. Other than that, there are a few air tankers and fired smoke jumpers that are based in West Yellowstone. So that's not that far away from Island Park. So they'd be another close resource. And I don't believe any of those folks were available that day because they were out fighting, again, other fires. So we got all of our aircraft available to us that day on loan, temporary close loan, a short leash loan from the Bridger Teton, where they had a pretty large fire going on south of Jackson. I think it was the Monument or the Roosevelt fire is one of those large ones. And they had a bunch of structures that were threatened and had been going on for a while. And so they had a huge arsenal of aircraft. And so we were able to call those guys up and request a few aircraft, at least for a couple hours, just to help us kind of, slow the fire down. And then we let them go, after they did a few drops on our fire. So, and that wasn't that far away. They were only, maybe an hour or less flight time from wherever they were. And so we were pretty fortunate to have them that close by.
Now, Tim, as a resident of Pinehaven, which is basically right here, what was your experience with the fire service, the support systems that came forward? How did you find out about what to do where the fire was concerned?
Well, we obviously could see the smoke plume. We're up well from there. The sheriff's office came up and did a run through the subdivision, stopping at all the places and letting people know what was going on. And that was kind of about it. Just that we were on pre-evacuation notice and that we were to just kind of get things prepared in case we needed to go.
Okay, great. And you didn't have to evacuate, is that correct?
That's correct.
Which is pretty fortunate. And John, what do we had the air support, we had the Island Park Fire Department, the county came in as well?
Well, yeah, that was part of the fire department, the Island Park Fire Department. They had their engines that came in that afternoon, and they helped us out for several days thereafter.
Okay. And so ultimately, what happened the evening of the fire? You said it broke out around, what time did you say? About 2 o'clock, did you say?
Yeah, 2 or 3 o'clock, something like that.
And then what happened toward the evening with the fire?
Well, the wind started dying down, which is pretty typical in the evenings. The humidity started coming up, pretty typical in the evenings. And they had put, as you can see there, a pretty good line around the fire, the air tankers and the helicopters. We had, by the afternoon, or the evening, we eventually had enough bodies on the fire. So you don't typically put out a fire just by aviation resources, just by helicopters and air tankers. You have to have bodies, firefighters on the ground supporting the water or the retardant that they just laid down on the ground. So we got a crew, a short crew in that night. And then I think the next day on the 19th, I think is when we got maybe 2 other crews that we brought in to help solidify that line that we were putting around the fire. And I think by the end of that second day, or maybe halfway through the third day, we finally created a line, a fire line, a fire break, if you will, around the whole thing, around the whole fire, to prevent it from possibly escaping if we got winds that picked up and wanted to push it out of there. So you need to be able to just, you pretty much just put a line around these fires and then start working it from the outside in to really corral the fire, slow it down, cool it down, and make sure it doesn't escape.
Awesome. Thank you. Have we covered everything, Liz? And are there any other questions folks that haven't put into the chat box?
So Paula, I wanted to cover a couple other things. Why did this fire get so much attention? Fairly obvious, threatening Pinehaven and Harriman, but without the neighbor fire resources to borrow from, we would have been a little bit more hard pressed to get a handle on it, but we would have put every resource we had on it because it was threatening structures. And then we were part of the priority system in terms of prioritizing fires and who got what attention. But we were very lucky that we had those air resources close by. It was also going to be suppressed because it was a human-caused fire. And so that was secondary to that, it was threatening structures. It received a lot of attention, obviously, because it was right there on Highway 20. Within about 5 minutes of the fire starting, I got calls from county commissioners saying, what are you doing about it? Is it out yet? And I was like, I don't even know about it yet, but yeah, I'm sure we're doing something. So it was, obviously the residents in the area were very concerned. We also had a public information person at Pinehaven, helping to provide information to folks who are coming along Highway 20 and wanting to know what was going on. And also very important, what Tim brought up is that the sheriff is the one who gives evacuation orders. No one else can do that. Forest Service will assist, but we do not give evacuation orders. We may provide information to the sheriff and make recommendations, but the sheriff is the only person who can do evacuation.
That's excellent information, Liz. Thank you. Yeah, and Keith, I don't think made it tonight. Keith Ritchie from the Fremont County, but he's in other meetings has been really great in explaining to us how the chain of command would work in a serious emergency like this. John, on that note, who was the first on the fire? Was it the Island Park Fire Department? Was it the sheriff? Do you know?
I believe it was one or a few of the engines from the Island Park Fire Department. And then our engine showed up shortly thereafter. So it was nice to have them nearby. And John, who's the captain on the engine from the Forest Service who showed up, who eventually ended up becoming the incident commander, knows the Island Park Fire Department really well. He used to be a member of that department years ago. So he had a bunch of friends, and so I think he may have even gotten word and I'm not quite sure where he was coming from, but he was not nearby. But I think he got word from one of his buddies who may have been on one of the engines, who said, "Hey, we got a fire here, and it seems to be on the forest. Where you at?" So, and then it wasn't probably just a few minutes later, the call came out from our dispatch center letting us know that we had a fire on the forest. So
I think that shows the value of relationships in Island Park and neighbors in Island Park. So we want to continue to grow and nurture that neighbor and community spirit as we move forward with the work that we're doing and into this coming season and in the future seasons. Did you have something?
Paul, can I make one more comment?
Absolutely.
So it also points towards the importance of being ready and taking care of your place, and the ready, set, go concepts, and being ready to leave, but also preparing. Like John mentioned, Harriman was prepared. They had pre-planned and done some work ahead of time, but that's essential. As was shown here, we borrowed stuff. We did not have all the resources to be able to suppress the fire. And that can happen any summer, anywhere, anytime. We may not be a priority area, and most of our resources could be gone. And so, like you heard, John McConnell, the engine captain, was nowhere near this area, and they were our closest resource for the Forest Service. So those relationships are really important, but it's also very important that people are prepared themselves and that they've done mitigation in their subdivisions around their homes, and that they're ready to leave, given short notice. And it's important when you live in the wildland urban interface that you are aware of that. Thank you.
Any other questions on like the Lyle Springs fire and what actually happened? So I'm going to move us to a different scenario. This is a scenario, basically the title of tonight's presentation is this is the worst case scenario. What has to go wrong for us not to put this fire out? So this fire is we're gonna sim this fire, and it's going to start in the exact same place as the other fire. I just want to make sure I didn't move things up here. I want to make sure I've got the right playback speed here. 25 is gonna be a little slow. I want to actually run this fire a little faster than that. Let's see if I can do this. That's why I've got two computers running. If I can move this over. Okay. So before I start this sim, you can kind of see again, the same kinds of things, although you're going to see in this video, there wasn't an air tanker, there wasn't a helicopter water drop, there's going to be fire engines, but no ground crews, because we're running the simulation as if we didn't get control of it and it possibly made its way up into the canopy. And like some of these fires we've seen in other parts of the West, the fire became uncontrolled. But you can see that the conditions are the same. It's warm, you don't have humidity. Again, we have our normal fuel load. Although in this case, if a fire started right in the same spot as Lyle Springs, it probably wouldn't burn as intensely as it might otherwise burn. But John, tell us a little what other than those things I just mentioned, why would a fire, what are some of the things that would cause a fire to not be able, for us not to be able to suppress it? You're on mute.
Sorry, say that question again.
So what would have had to go wrong for this scenario? And I'm going to run the scenario for this scenario to happen. When the fire starts.
So you can see, I'm not sure if you guys are paying attention to the conditions in that little box down on the bottom right, but that's, you can see that the conditions are a little different. So we're dealing with not completely out of the ordinary conditions for August, September here in Island Park. So those are kind of towards the upper end of our conditions. So the temperatures, let me move this down. Temperatures are pretty high. The winds are pretty high. The humidities are pretty low. So if we have those conditions, which we get a lot of our large fires under those conditions, and we have very little support, firefighter support to put this out, then it may just keep going. And it's really the winds that are really going to push our fires. And so we really have to be careful, because those winds can really pick up quickly and start pushing those fires really fast. And so with these winds out of the west, which they typically are, and the Lyle Springs fire started onto the west of the highway, then it's just going to push that fire east to the highway and towards Pinehaven as well.
And then notice on this sim, there's fire engines on Highway 20 here. Then we had, again, you can do anything you want with the sim, but we had put some fire engines in the community, possibly to help people evacuate because the fire is out of control. But you can see that without those aerial fire lines drawn, it obviously makes its way down and out very quickly. I'm just looking at I'm trying to also look at some of the comments. And John, I want to come back to your comments in a little bit. As Ed Liz also mentioned it. So I'm going to go ahead and let that fire go a little bit. There's some ground support that's coming up the highway. But you'll also notice spot fires are happening. John, tell us a little bit about spot fires and wind. Can you give us some idea, like with fire behavior, especially when it's burning? I'm assuming up in the canopy. What can happen?
Yeah, so spot fires are basically just embers that are coming from the main front of the fire. So the main front is, basically the hottest, most active part of the fire there, which is on the right side of the fire. So it's what we call the head of the fire. So the wind is pushing the fire in that direction. And so if there's enough wind and the conditions, the fuels are dry enough, then the fire can send embers ahead of itself, and sometimes quite far ahead of itself, and start new fires. And then those fires can be big just on their own. And then as it gets closer, as the larger fire gets closer to the smaller fires, it increases the intensity of the overall fire even that much more. It just kind of feeds on itself. And that's what makes it really tough. I mean, we can be really good about, putting out the head of the fire, but if we're not careful, those spot fires will catch us, and then we'll have to draw back and try to catch the fire just, further back behind us, because we didn't see those spot fires. So they can really make that fire progress pretty quickly.
Okay. So let me pause this really quickly. I want to just stop. There's some really good information in the chat, and maybe some discussion about evacuation. I want to come back to those questions and to those comments. I'd like actually for us to kind of maybe share some out loud in a moment here. What I would like to do then is, this is show you a simulation. Let me zoom in on it. And hard to start it. Yeah, let's see. Let me run it a little bit further. I'm not sure how well you can, unfortunately, okay, let me pause it here. Okay, so this is the same fire scenario. It's a little different because every time you run the scenario on a sim table, it burns a little differently because it's a simulation. But I think right here, this is where neighborhood ambassador Tim Fuchs lives. Is that correct, Tim?
Yes.
And so I met with Tim earlier or last week, and we were talking about, he's going to talk a little bit about some of his ideation about Ready, Set, Go. But what was interesting is when I showed him this video and I hadn't seen it before talking to him, something very crazy happened. If you keep an eye, this is where his house is. And we were talking about those embers flying forward of the fire. And boom, a spot fire starts. And so Tim, tell us a little bit about where this spot fire is starting. You know, right?
Yeah, it looked like it was just north of my house there, and I border the Forest Service property right there.
So that started on the Forest Service property bordering your property, not necessarily.
Yeah, right together there. Yeah.
And so I'm going to back this up though a little bit because I would imagine, and Liz, you can let me. It's harder for me to manipulate it. So out here, I would imagine we would know that this fire was probably not going to be was uncontrolled, and maybe even sooner than that. John or Liz, can you speak to evacuation? Would it have gotten this close to Pinehaven before the sheriff would go in there and evacuate?
Liz, that's all up to the sheriff. We, of course, would have said that, there's issues. We believe it will cross Highway 20. We don't have enough resources to stop it. And we recommend evacuating Pinehaven. And the incident commander would have communicated that, or the duty officer would have communicated that to the sheriff during that time.
Okay, yes, thank you for reiterating that. So it would be law enforcement, it would be the sheriff that would make the determination about evacuation. The homeowner, right? So Tim, I'm going to pull up your little map that you made. Thank you for doing that. So Tim actually made a map, and make that a little bit bigger, and he kind of followed a protocol that we talked a little bit about, kind of thinking about your neighborhood and the strengths, weaknesses, and support in your neighborhood in terms of being ready, set, go. This is your house right here, Tim?
Yes.
So walk us through a little bit as you were making this graphic for us. What kinds of things went through your mind in regards to this fire that's burning over here, and you're seeing the smoke, and you're having to make a decision about how to get out?
Well, we're fairly lucky from the standpoint of we have 3 and possibly 4 access points to the subdivision. Unfortunately, we're going towards the fire to get out, but we've got the one on the north end off of Bull Moose, and then we've got the North Pinehaven one below it, and then we've got Pinehaven below it, and then if you come through the subdivision, and there's a lock gate on the south end that could be opened up, and then we can hit the Henry's Fork Lodge Road and go out that way.
Right here, huh?
Yes.
So do you think that many folks in, let's say, these parts of, and I don't know how many people from Pinehaven are joining us tonight, but I wanted to also ask folks that if you don't live in Pinehaven, some people, even if you don't live in Pinehaven, give some thought to your own subdivision, where your cabin, your house is in Island Park now. and think about how would you get out?
Finally let me in.
How would you get out, of your own subdivision? So that's kind of what Tim kind of took himself through, and we talked about as well. Tim, talk a little bit about the strengths that you labeled for your community in terms of a fire emergency.
Well, overall, we do have good access to the highway. We're kind of a long north-south subdivision, but it isn't going extremely deep because we border Harriman and the river. So we do have good access out with 4 points. We do have very well maintained roads for a lot of the subdivisions up here. They are in pretty good shape. They're wider than most of the subdivisions I've looked at. We do have Harriman Lake and the river that are right here that are water sources that certainly helped out on the fire from 2018. And of course, the proximity of the Island Park Fire Department is always a help.
And Paula, can I add something? This is Liz again.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, the Island Park Sustainable Fire Community hosted some Are You Prepared workshops? And Pinehaven was one of the developments that came. And following that, like the next day, or maybe that afternoon, folks from the Island Park Sustainable Fire Community and Jeff Hill, our fire management officer, went with Pinehaven and began to help them develop an evacuation plan and how to make their evacuation routes safer. And so hopefully residents have been informed of that. And we worked on a couple other developments as well, because evacuation is one of the big issues for folks, and then being prepared. And so we had lots of discussions about what to do to be prepared and then what to do if you haven't. And so Pinehaven took advantage of that.
I see that Bonnie Ashhold is in had come into the meeting. Bonnie, were you involved in some of that work?
No, I wasn't. Can you,
Okay.
yeah, no, my husband was.
Okay.
But I wasn't involved in that.
Yeah.
That's what I thought, Bonnie, is that your sweetheart
Yeah.
spearheaded that.
Yeah, yeah. I hope that, Tim, it looks like you're taking it over. Trying to start the, there you go.
I'm sorry.
Are you taking over the Pinehaven fire marshal job or whatever you want to call it?
I guess I don't know. Thornton just asked if I could start being active with the group to find out what was going on and pass the information along.
Okay, that's great. There is a document that's due, that, I was just like thinking, I hope it's out there on next, or I can look around, I can find it. If you don't have it.
I think that I actually have a copy. I think I actually have a copy, so I will share it with Tim, and we can talk more this summer about memorializing that a little bit more and getting that out there.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Tim, talk a little bit about, as you kind of went through your plan here, or your where your house is and your evacuation, your ready, set, go, what some of your weaknesses that you discovered were in your community.
Well, this is the first I've heard about the evacuation plan, so that's good to know. And I'll touch bases with the board because we do have a lot of new ownership in here. And I'm sure that there's a lot of folks that aren't aware of that, that there are some plans in place. So we've owned up here since 2008 or 9. And like I said, I was not aware of that. So that's good to find out. Some of the weaknesses are just the ability to communicate across the subdivision can be difficult. Obviously in September, our number of residents that are in the subdivision are down, and it's hard to figure out who's in and who isn't. Also, just that we've been working to try to reduce some of the fuels loads in here, but still there's quite a little bit of dense tree stands and things like that. We do slash removal every summer. We contract with a local contractor. People can put out piles of slash and he will pick it up. If they're huge piles and they can make arrangements on their own with the same contractor to haul it out, but there's some financial responsibilities then. But we've been working to try to reduce those fuel loads, but we've got a ways to go yet.
Awesome, thank you. Any other, are there any, and then of course, he also listed some areas where he feels that his community has support. So obviously there's friends, neighbors, and residents who can support each other. There are some even, as we talk more about this summer in terms of Ready, Set, Go, there are some other variables that we also, I think, in a subdivision or community want to talk about. And those are things like, are there elderly folks that might need some help? Are there people that live alone? Pets? What's the plan for your pets, and how will you be able to get your pets out? I'm not sure to what extent, Tim, did you look at the questionnaire I gave you, I think probably to develop this, yes?
Yes.
So we will, go ahead.
One other thing that makes us maybe a little more unique than some of the other subdivisions is we don't have a lot of rentals here. There are some homeowners covenants that don't allow for frequent rentals. And so that makes it a little easier as far as knowing who our neighbors are and those types of things. A lot of the folks have lived up here for a long time or have owned up here for a long time. We are getting an influx of some new people with the boom that's going on, but still, without that rental component, it makes it a lot easier to be a little closer subdivision.
Yeah, and I see that in the chat a little bit too. That is a big concern, I think, for residents up in Island Park are the short-term rentals. Anybody have anything to add to that? I really want to thank Tim for his little evacuation map, his thinking about his community, and his actual pictures of the fire. Just phenomenal. Tim, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Do you have any other last comments about your map or your pictures or
No, I don't.
Thank you. Awesome. Okay, so I think this is our Pine. So this is sort of that Pinehaven Ready, Set, Go fire. I should probably burn it a little faster, but ultimately the fire is going to do what we said it could do, and that is some of these embers are going to fly ahead of the fire. You can see where that hit really close to Tim's house. More embers fly in, and as you saw on his map, one of the weaknesses of any of our communities in Island Park is there's a lot of fuel in our communities. We may have pulled out a lot of slash in the past couple of years, but we still have a lot of fuel that we're sitting on in our communities. I would like to now ask Susan Sullivan, who's one of our outreach representatives in Island Park, if she would briefly talk to us a little bit about the zones that you can think about in terms of making your house prepared for wildfire.
Okay, hi. This actually has changed since we started out. I mean, it used to be like 5, 30, 60, and trees used to be able to be closer, but I think we've learned so much information from all these large fires that they have now made the recommendations a little bit tougher. In this diagram, the zones are the 1 to 5 or 0 to 5 feet, 5 to 30, 30 to 100, and 100 to 200. But first of all, we should really start with the house. You can see by the diagram, keep your roofs clear. Hardening of the structure has become more important as we've learned through these recent catastrophic fires. Keeping your roof and your window wells free of flammable materials such as leaves, pine needles, keeping your roof in good condition so there's no way an ember or a firebrand can get underneath your roof and start your roof on fire. Placing on your vents, if you have vents either in your attic or in your foundation, they recommend, the old standard was 1/4-inch metal screening. And now because of the fire information we have learned, they are now recommending 1/8 of an inch metal screening. And one thing I just like to tell everyone, if you're gonna leave your home, just close your windows, especially if you're going away for, a couple of hours, 3, 4, 5 hours. You never know what's gonna happen when you're gone, and firebrands can go right through all those screen windows. We'll move on to the 0 to 5 foot zone. It is now recommended there is no flammable materials in this area. Rock, concrete, and maybe just dirt that's free of all vegetation are good choices. No wood piles. Having firewood stacked to the house seems to be very common. People like to have their wood handy, but it's not a good idea. If a firebrand lands on your wood pile, it will ignite your house. The garage is a good place to store wood, or a shed. Okay. We do not want the fire to get to your home. So if we have a nice hard surface from 5 feet away and not too many trees near in the 5 to 30 feet, then the fire has a hard time reaching your house, and it'll be safer that way. In the 5 to 30 foot zone, we want to remove most of the trees. And keeping your grass mowed. So if you have longer grass, like in the forest grass that we have, if you can just trim it down, keep it mowed, that prevents it from the fire getting larger. If the grass is close to the ground, it's, their fire will be only inches from the ground. If your grass is higher, then of course the fire will be higher. Okay. The recommendations now are 18 feet between tree crowns, and the crown is the widest part of the tree. It used to be 12 when I first started, but because of the more knowledge we are gaining, they are recommending 18 feet between crown space in this area. It's recommended that sheds and firewood be stored more than 30 feet from your house. And also, we do not want to store firewood under trees. That's another common thing that people do up in Island Park. They put the huge wood pile between 2 trees. And if that wood pile would have, or if it did catch fire, it's going to light the trees on fire, which makes it harder. Also, in the next area, we recommend that the trees have a crown spacing of 12 feet between tree crowns. And then they go on to the 200 foot zone too. This picture, if you can go as far out as you can go from your home is the better choice. A lot of places don't even have 200 feet out from their home. It's already the next person's property, so you can't really control a lot of that. But on your own property, if you can just keep it clean, keep your trees limbed up, and put spacing between your trees. More spacing between the trees, it just slows the fire down and makes it easier to fight.
Awesome.
And that's it.
Yes, I'm glad you said, notice that all these trees in this diagram, although they don't look like conifers, but even all the trees are limbed up. So that way, if there's anything that's flammable on the ground, it can't catch the bottom on fire and find its way into the canopy of the when those embers blow over from across the highway when the fire starts. Okay, I need to go back to, so we did one more video then with SimTable, and this video, let me set this video up. This video now is, I'm gonna zoom in as much as I can here. This is Pinehaven again. Same scenario, the fire has started. Theoretically, Pinehaven at this point would be evacuated. But I'm going to go ahead and start it. This is a scenario where we actually went in and said each one of the homes in Pinehaven has been hardened, and many of the fuels have been either removed or trees have been limbed up. All those things Susan was saying have happened. for these properties, these structures in Pinehaven. The trees have been spaced, homes hardened, etc. So we went in and put those components into the simulation and then ran the simulation again. And what you'll see is places where there is dense trees, those are burning, but it is making its way around structures where fuels have been removed around the structures. And the homes themselves have had a little bit of hardening on them against wildfire. I wish I had also prepared a little bit more because there are pictures of the Paradise Fire where homes that were hardened and also had removed a lot of the debris around them. They survived, whereas many of the homes that didn't have this work done on them, they didn't survive Paradise. But that we ran that scenario. John, do you want to say anything about that, or Liz, about the home hardening and or the removing of fuels in the community? And I'll run it again.
I think Susan did an awesome job of kind of describing what folks want to be thinking about around their house if they have the ability to do that. There's always more work that could be done around there, and it's just in a horrible worst case scenario system like this, then you're going to want as much work done around your house as possible.
And like the saying goes, it takes a village. You can't just do it yourself. Your neighbors need to do it as well, especially those who are close by, so that you're all safe. So talk to each other and convince each other and work together to get it done.
Awesome. All right. I'm going to stop sharing all these crazy videos and see what kinds of questions. There are some questions in the chat box that we might want to address. Linda was asking where are some good places to store firewood? Susan, I guess, wrote back.
Yeah, I wrote back. I mean, when we were up at Harriman, our firewood was in our garage. But other than that, just at least 30 feet away from your house and not under trees is a good idea. If you have an open space that you can clear around it too, or in a storage shed.
Steve, where do you generally suggest people, when you guys go out and do your evaluations, where do you suggest people store their firewood?
Yeah, Susan was right on the money. It's recommended NFPA beyond 30 feet outside of that 30-foot zone, not attached or under anything that can burn. So you want it to be separated from the home so it doesn't act like a wick. And yeah, like Susan said, if you have a storage shed or indoors, it's okay in the winter if you have a whole bunch close by, if you want to keep it handy, but in the summer, and especially when fire danger really gets high, it's best to just get it out beyond 30 feet and beyond anything burnable. But yeah, Susan was spot on.
And Steve, would you let folks know who you are and what your role is?
Oh, you bet. Yeah, I'm Steve Markison. I'm retired from the Forest Service as a fire management officer. Worked with John and Liz for a long time over here back in the day. And I have a private business for fire mitigation consultant, fire mitigation, wildfire mitigation specialist, NFPA certified. So yeah, kind of doing everything you guys are doing. I'm so impressed with this presentation, just everything. I mean, Paula, you and Susan are so knowledgeable, and You sound like a really qualified and knowledgeable fire behavior analyst, though you're talking about running that model and that simulation. So great job for your community and all of you guys coming together. And yeah, great input from John and Liz. So yeah, really impressed. And I know Greg is on from one of our communities here. He's our ambassador, and I just texted him, but our brains are already ticking on how we could do a similar sim for over here. So great example for everyone. So thank you for the invite.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad. Thank you for your that information, and everything I've learned. I can chalk up to Liz Davey and John White. Quite frankly, they're good teachers. They've been good teachers.
Yeah, I've learned from them before as well. Great job, you guys.
And some other things that I've kind of discovered too. Oh, Lloyd, tell us a little bit more though about Two Tops and the metal siding.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So our CCNRs at Two Top are pretty restrictive on how we can finish our homes, and even our buildings. Extra buildings can't be like buildings that are pre-made and brought in, and they're supposed to match your house, all those sort of things. But it seems to me that listening to this is that I have to say I do have wood stacked near one of our trees, and I know our neighbors do too. And if we have restrictions that say that we can't have metal, which to me would make sense around a woodshed, if it's going to be a woodshed, it should probably be metal, then maybe we need to take a look at our CCNRs. And I believe we have, I think I have one of our previous board members on here, Larry Staker. He's on here also, but that is something that I had never thought about. But we have just altered our CCNRs once for, with just limited short-term rentals. There aren't any, but that's, I think we need to do another look at our CCNRs as far as our building restrictions.
So thank you. Thanks for that feedback. And any other questions or comments about tonight's presentation? Anything resonating with you about your own property in Island Park that you want to share with us? Now we're good. Okay. I'm gonna give us some wait time.
Paula, this is Loy again.
Hi, Loy.
Hi. On Two Top Estates, we only have one very ugly road in and out of this subdivision. In the summer months and most of the spring and fall, we'd be able to probably get out of here pretty good. I honestly have my doubts in the winter if we had a house fire up here, unless the fire department can chain up that they're going to get here, because we know that most big trucks, USPS, Schwann's, nobody can get up here in the winter.
By saying that Eastern Idaho College had obtained 3 of these simulation programs, period. If that is the college in Idaho Falls, we ought to see.
Sounds like Greg needs to be muted, huh?
Oh, shit.
Oh, I see. I thought you were asking a question, Greg.
I'm answering Steve's message here. Sorry. I didn't even know it was on.
That's funny. That's awesome. But yes, guys, you know, Steve and Greg, we are having a training on the 10th of June in Ashton. And so you guys please come to that training. And I know I have some neighborhood ambassadors that are planning to go to that training as well.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
That sounded interesting. I'm sorry. Yeah, it had sounded interesting, but I figured I would let the professionals sign up first, and if there was still space, I might sign up.
No, I think there will be space. I think we're good.
Paula, can I address Loy's question about evacuation or concerns about evacuation?
Yes, please.
So many of the subdivisions in Island Park, as we've discovered through these efforts, has one way in, one way out. They're steep, they're narrow, they're not well maintained for a variety of reasons. And then there are some subdivisions that have really good access and egress as well. And we've been working with communities, but they gotta wanna do it. Some of the county guidance is not clear, and a lot of the subdivisions are older than when the county guidelines went in. So just things to take note of and to be proactive with is that you need two ways. You need them to be wide enough, and you need them to be of a grade where a heavy tanker truck can get. Our previous fire chief we had a demonstration in Yale Creek at the bottom of a road and said, everyone who lives above me, I can't get to you. Well, that was, I don't know, 7/8 of the subdivision. Kind of shocked people because they figured they were protected. Also, the Forest Service does not fight structure fires, and we only fight fires that threaten the national forest. We do not come to the rescue to your fire unless it threatens the national forest, contrary to popular belief. We will help, we will assist if we are called, but we do not always show up. So something to keep in mind as well. Don't want to say you're on your own, but you're kind of on your own. And so that's why I say it takes a village and working together to be ready for the inevitable wildfire that shows up. Thanks.
And I want to, maybe at a future meeting, we will have, we have actually a success story from up in Yale Creek. The Sugar Pine Road, I think, took that information to heart, and they actually worked with the Island Park Fire Department to do pullouts going up their road and to actually harden their road and widen their road so they didn't have the same kind of erosion that they always have every winter. And so they actually brought the fire chief Nathaniel up to the road, and he said, yep, we'll go ahead and bring a truck up here now because there's pullouts. So a really good success story, and we'll feature that at a meeting this summer because it's a success story. That's exactly what Liz is talking about. The village got together, widened the road, and created pullouts so that those trucks could turn around and save their homes should a fire break out.
Liz, Larry Staker. Larry Staker up in Two Top. We have the meadow down on the other side of our residential area that is populated by campers, and there are no fire rings in that area. We as neighbors and citizens would like to actually help put some in there and some regulation as to the number of campers that can gather. Sometimes we have as many as 30 or 40 vehicles in that meadow area. And that's certainly a risk for those of us who live up on the mountain with trees around. Some help or some suggestions. Isn't that right, Lloyd?
Yes, actually, when I think it was Sue that came up here and did our inspection on our house, and she actually showed us where the direction of the fires would come, right into our subdivision. And regrettably, it all came from down below us in those meadows where the campers are, and from just south of us on Red Rock Road.
Yeah, that's where the grizzly bears come from too, the leftover food down there.
So yeah, she pointed out to us, she said, this is the direction the fire is going to come, usually, because that's our prevailing wind. And regrettably, down below us is where all those campers are.
Maybe we can work more closely with Liz on that. This has been
that land, Larry, that land might be state land too. You might check to see if it's state land or Forest Service. And if it's state land, then you can work through the state office there in Idaho Falls.
Okay.
The land directly across Red Rock from us that is the major part of Red Rock Road is all is Targhee National Forest. There is one small piece of BLM up above us toward Henry's Lake that is on the other side also. But at this point, the ground across from us is It's not state. State land is behind us on the other side.
Well, this has been a very interesting presentation and kind of terrifying. Thank you.
Hopefully, Larry, not so terrifying that it makes you not be able to see the possibility of action. And it sounds like you guys up in Dewtop really do see the possibility of taking action.
Well, we hauled 9 piles of slash and trash off our lot last year.
Yes.
And so did Schrader. So
Mm-hmm.
we're trying to clean up.
That's good. All right. Well, thanks everyone. I really want to thank everybody who participated tonight. Liz, John, obviously I couldn't have done this without you. And then Tim, I couldn't have done this without you as well. Thank you so much for sharing your pictures and your experience over there in Pinehaven and for folks coming. We just have one small piece of business that we're going to take care of for the Island Park community in general. I'm going to turn it over to Dave. He's just going to give us a little bit of a board report regarding, some our board activities. And let me share my screen, Dave, so we can look at your your notes and just kind of give us this. This is just the only piece of business we're going to do tonight, I think, and then we'll sign off.
Well, I did give a report last month, so the board did meet on the March 31st is the first quarter meeting, and all the members are present. We had a great presentation from Nancy Bergman at Quick Start Accounting, our accountant, and she reported the financial report for the year 2020. The board and the accountant discussed the financial condition. She helped the board better understand our more complicated report due to the workings of numerous grants that we're running last year. It was a monumental task for Paula, our esteemed executive director who managed it, but the help of Nancy lining it all up and keeping us straight got our money to us quicker because it was such a good accounting system. Because the company is growing, the board has discussed building board capacity. This is a big topic for us this next year, and this resulted in a need to review the bylaws to comply because we're a 501c3 that would make sure we actually do what we say we do. So further, it was decided that we were going to add 2 additional board members to bring the total to 7. And we hope to have 2 members in place by June. And so we're looking for a couple of community members that want to join the board. And I hope we have some people. Paula's going to put something in the paper, but anyway, it was an exciting board meeting. I think we're going to move forward, and we are growing in leaps and bounds. So everybody join in and help us out. We still need to have donations. We don't sustain ourselves just on our indirect funds, which is 10% of the grant money. So thank you very much, members. I really appreciate 25 people showing up for this meeting. Take care.
Thanks, Dave. Yep. So look in the paper. There'll be a call for board members. If you know somebody that, or yourself, you're interested in possibly being a member of the Island Park Sustainable Fire Board, we would love to hear from you. So look for that in the paper. We do have quite a few grants coming in this summer. We might even, drum roll please, we might even have that FEMA grant coming in. And that's about 64 properties that we would be pulling fuels out of. So lots and lots and lots of work happening this summer, and a lot of wonderful events. But I think we're kind of getting to a little later in the evening, and I want to let people go have the rest of their evening. Are there any other questions or comments for the good of the cause for tonight? All right. I really want to thank everybody for coming. John, Liz, Susan, thank you so much for showing us the home hardening piece. Tim, we'll be meeting next month and having another fun topic to discuss. Hopefully, a screening of a documentary about the West fires in the West. Any other comments?
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you, Paula.
Thanks very much.
All right.
Thank you.
For now.
Great to see everybody. See you soon. I'm going to be there soon, and I won't get to wear this anymore, right?
Thanks, Paula.
Thank you.
Val, I love you. Call me tomorrow.
What do you want me to call you? You want me to call you tomorrow?
Call me tomorrow.
Okay, I'll try.
I'll call you tomorrow. I'll just try not to call you too early.
Oh, okay. All right. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.